The whole nation is standing in an assembly, waiting. The prophet has cast the lots. The lots have named the tribe, then the clan, then the family, then the man. And the man cannot be found. They search the crowd. They search the tents. In the end, God himself has to tell them where he is. He has hidden himself among the baggage. The tallest man in Israel is crouching behind the luggage. They drag him out, and he stands up, and he is a head and shoulders above every person there. And the people shout, "Long live the king! This is Saul, the first king of Israel." And the story of how a nation talked itself into wanting him is the story of how a people trades its freedom for the promise of safety. It begins in a town called Ramah. The elders of Israel come to an old man, Samuel, prophet, judge, the last of a dying system. His sons are meant to succeed him. They take bribes. They twist justice. And the elders say, "Give us a king to judge us, like all the nations." To understand why, look at the world they were standing in. Israel in the 11th century before Christ was not a country. It was a network of hill villages, no standing army, no capital, no treasury. When a crisis came, God raised up a judge, a shofet, who mustered farmers, won a battle, and went home. It worked for 300 years. Then the pressure changed. To the west, the Philistines. 5 cities, professional soldiers, chariots on the flatland. To the east, the Ammonites, and their king, Nahash. Nahash besieged the Israelite town of Jabesh Gilead and offered them terms. He would spare the city, if he could put out the right eye of every man in it. The town sent messengers across the country, begging for anyone to come, because there was no one. There was no army to call. That is the moment the elders walk to Ramah. Their demand was not stupid. It was desperate. But listen to the words they chose. A king like all the nations. In the ancient world, a king was not simply a general. He was sacred. In Egypt, in Mesopotamia, in Canaan. The king was the hinge between heaven and earth, the son of the god, the guarantee of the harvest, the keeper of order. Israel's constitution said something nobody else was saying. God is the king. The whole nation is his vassal, not a god king, not a priest king. Every citizen standing directly under the covenant. So the elders are not requesting an administrator. They are asking to be rewritten. And God says a devastating thing. They have not rejected you. They have rejected me from being king over them. Then God tells Samuel to warn them. And what follows is one of the bleakest speeches in the Bible. He will take your sons for his chariots. He will take your daughters for his kitchens. He will take your fields, your vineyards, your olive groves, and hand them to his officials. He will take 1/10 of your grain, and you will cry out because of the king you have chosen, and the Lord will not answer you in that day. The Hebrew verb lakach, to take, beats through that speech like a drum. For a long time, scholars assumed this was written centuries later, that somebody looked back at Solomon's taxes and Ahab's land grabs and put the complaint in Samuel's mouth after the fact. Then a scholar named Isaac Mendelsohn went to the archives, not the Bible's archives, the Canaanites. Clay tablets from the cities of Ugarit and Alalach. Administrative records. Written before Israel ever had a king. And every item on Samuel's list is already there. An elite chariot caste, subsidized by the palace. The king's right to seize land and hand it to his loyalists. A tithe of the harvest, not to the temple. To the palace. Forced labor gangs, drafted by the crown. Samuel was not predicting Israel's future. He was describing Israel's neighbors. He told them exactly what they were asking for. They said yes anyway. Now, one problem remains, because the Torah already legislated a king. Deuteronomy 17. When you say, "I will set a king over me," you may. So which is it? Divine plan or treason? Look at what Deuteronomy actually permits. No multiplying horses. So no cavalry. No multiplying wives. So no alliance marriages. No hoarding silver and gold. So no war chest. And the king must copy out the law by hand and read it every day of his life, so that his heart is not lifted above his brothers. Gary Knoppers calls this a reconceptualization of kingship. It is a throne with its power drained from it, a king who is, functionally, the most accountable man in the country. That king Israel could have had. The one they demanded was the other kind. Scholars have argued for a century over whether these two texts can stand together. Martin Noth, Frank Moore Cross, and Timo Veijola traced the anti-monarchy speeches to later editors, men writing in the wreckage of the exile, explaining how it all went wrong. Robert Alter and Lyle Eslinger answered, "Stop cutting the text apart. Read it as it stands." The book opens with a corrupt priest whose sons are worthless, and then, a few chapters later, shows us a righteous prophet whose sons are worthless too. The old system is not being attacked, it is being buried, and into that exhaustion, God gives them what they ask for. Not as a blessing, as a verdict. His name is Saul. The Bible rarely tells you what people look like. It tells you about Saul immediately. There was not a man among the people of Israel more handsome than he. From his shoulders upward, he was taller than any of the people. In the ancient world, that sentence is a coronation. Gilgamesh is introduced by his stature. Pharaoh is drawn twice the size of his subjects. Tall means chosen. Tall means legitimate. The narrator is baiting a hook, because watch what Saul actually does. We meet him hunting his father's lost donkeys. He can't find them. He gives up. It is his servant who knows there is a seer in the town. It is his servant who has the silver to pay him. The tallest man in Israel is passive, discouraged, and following. Samuel anoints him, but notice the word. Not Melek. King, Nagid. Prince, commander, deputy. Albrecht Alt and Frank Moore Cross both pressed hard on this distinction. A Melek is sovereign. A Nagid answers to someone. Israel asked for a Melek. God appointed a Nagid. The whole tragedy of Saul lives in the distance between those two words, which brings us back to the baggage. And then, his one great hour. Word comes about Jabesh Gilead. The right eyes, Nahash. And the Spirit of God rushes on Saul, and his anger is kindled. He takes a yoke of oxen. He cuts them into 12 pieces. He sends the pieces through every tribe of Israel. Whoever does not come out after Saul, this is what happens to his oxen. At the end of Judges, a Levite's concubine is raped to death in the town of Gibeah. He cuts her body into 12 pieces and sends them through Israel. The Hebrew uses the same 3 verbs in the same order. Take, cut, send. And Gibeah is Saul's hometown. It gets closer than that. After the civil war that nearly erased the tribe of Benjamin, the survivors were given wives taken from one single city. Jabesh Gilead. Saul is, by blood, the grandson of that rescue. He is not answering a foreign policy crisis. He is answering his own family's oldest wound. And he takes the sign of Israel's collapse, a body cut in 12, and turns it into the sign of Israel's rescue. 30,000 men come out. Jabesh Gilead is saved. And the tribes go up to Gilgal and make him king in earnest. It is the best thing he ever does. It is very nearly the last. Before we watch him fall, we should ask a harder question. What kind of king was he actually? The Bible says Saul ruled from Gibeah. Archaeologists identified Gibeah with a mound north of Jerusalem called el-Ful. In the 1920s, the great American archaeologist William Foxwell Albright dug there. He found a square stone tower, thick walls, a fortress, and he announced he had found the palace of King Saul. For decades, that was the picture. Then Israel Finkelstein went back to the evidence. He re-examined the pottery in the tower's foundations and found styles that did not exist in Saul's century. Finkelstein's conclusion is blunt. There was no Iron Age I fortress at el-Ful. There was a small, poor farming village. The tower is centuries too late. And so the argument opens up. Was Saul a king or a Highland chieftain with a big reputation? Finkelstein and Neil Asher. Silberman argue for the chieftain. The Highlands, they say, had no bureaucracy, no scribes, no cities. You cannot run a state out of a village. Others push back hard. Carol Meyers points out what the text quietly records. Saul maintains a standing force of 3,000 men. He appoints a personal priest. That is not a tribal militia. That is the seed of an administration. And Avraham Faust and Zev Farber argue that the region's archaeology does show a real, if modest, early Israelite polity taking shape, pushed into existence by the one pressure nobody could ignore: the Philistines. Now, hold that question and look at how the Bible itself opens Saul's reign. 1 Samuel chapter 13, verse 1. In the Hebrew it says, Saul was 1 year old when he became king, and he reigned 2 years over Israel. 1 year old. The numbers fell out. Somewhere in the copying, they were lost. The Greek translators found the verse so broken, they left it out entirely. The Syriac guessed 21. Some Greek manuscripts guessed 30. The Book of Acts says 40 years. Your English Bible has probably filled the gap with brackets or a footnote. Now, sit with that. The scribes who copied this text could have smoothed it over. They could have invented a number, and nobody would ever have known. They left the whole in. They preserved a verse that does not make sense, because it was what they had received. Remember that. In the next episode, it is going to matter a great deal. Gilgal. The Philistines mass at Michmash. The militia is evaporating into caves. Samuel had said, "Wait 7 days." Saul waits 7 days. On the 7th day, Samuel does not come, and the army is walking away in front of him. So Saul offers the sacrifice himself, and Samuel arrives while the smoke is still rising. Your kingdom shall not continue. It is worth pausing on how harsh that seems. Dawn Maria Sellars and Diana Edelman have both pushed back on the traditional reading, the one where Saul is an arrogant man grasping for priestly power. Look again, they say. Saul is not grabbing. Saul is panicking. He has no professional army. He has frightened farmers. And Edelman notes an irony that cuts deep. Samuel warned Israel that a king would coerce them. Saul is condemned, in part, for not being ruthless enough to make his men stay. Then comes Amalek, the final break. The command is total destruction. Saul wins the battle and spares the enemy king, and the best of the livestock. Samuel asks him what the bleating of sheep is doing in his ears. Saul says the animals are for sacrifice, and Samuel gives him the line the whole Old Testament turns on: to obey is better than sacrifice. Then Saul confesses, and his confession is the most honest thing in the book. I have sinned. I feared the people and obeyed their voice. There it is. He is not a tyrant. He is a man who cannot say no to a crowd. He was made king by public acclaim, and he will spend his entire reign terrified of losing it. David Gunn argued the deck was stacked against him from the start, that Saul is a tragic victim, trapped by a cold prophet and an insecure God. V. Phillips Long answered that the pattern is too consistent to be an accident. The failures are not bad luck. They are a trajectory. Both readings are worth carrying with you, because the man Israel chose to fight their battles is about to be handed the one battle he was chosen for. Israel asked for a king to go out before them and fight their battles. They got one. He was tall. He was handsome. He was anointed by a prophet, chosen by lot, and cheered by the tribes. And Samuel warned them exactly what it would cost. Your sons, your fields, your grain, your freedom. But Samuel never warned them of the worst thing, because nobody standing in that assembly could have imagined it. Out on the coast, the Philistines were building an empire, 5 cities, mud brick walls meters thick, and a blockade that would leave an entire nation without a blacksmith. And out of the largest of those cities, one man would walk into a valley in bronze armor with an iron spear and shout the same challenge for 40 days. Send me one man. And Israel had a man. He was a head and shoulders above everyone else in the nation. He had the armor. He had the height. He had the anointing. He did not go. That is where we go next.